What's up, guys? Welcome back to another daily Bible reading snapshot. Today we're looking at Isaiah 50, 51, and 52 in the Old Testament. Then we're looking at a brand new book, the book of First Thessalonians in the New Testament. So here in the book of Isaiah, we're going to see a contrast between how Israel has done exactly the wrong thing. They've heard God's law, they've heard God's prophets, and they've said, nope, not going to follow that. I'm going to follow my own gods. But then, on the other hand, you have the servant of the Lord who's going to start talking like halfway through this chapter. And you're going to see how he's different. The Israelites, they didn't serve God, but the servant of the Lord, it says he gives his back to those who strike them and his cheeks to those who pull out the beard. I hid not my face from disgrace and spitting. Who vindicates this person? Well, the Lord is going to do that. So you might say, wait a minute, like who's the person who gives their back to be beat and their face to be struck and their face to be spat at? Who's going to do that? The servant of the Lord? What is that talking about? Well, if you know who the servant of the Lord is that we've been talking about over and over again, the servant of the Lord is Jesus. You see how this makes perfect sense. He's the one who stands between Israel and God. And really, we see in the New Testament, he's the only mediator, the only in-between between God and man, Jesus Christ. He's going to stand in between and he's going to be punished. What is he going to be punished for? Well, we're going to continue to read that. Chapter 51, God says, look, I want you Israelites to listen to me, especially those of you who seek the Lord. Just remember the law has gone out. People have seen it. God has revealed his righteousness to people, but so many people won't embrace it. But the truth is, God is going to establish eternal salvation. And that's the big idea here. In verses 5, 6, 7, 8, you see that there's going to be this all generations thing, forever salvation. So whatever God's doing through this judgment, on the other side, there's going to be eternal salvation. And that's important to remember because we might look at this and say, well, I guess this is just talking about the exile. And when the exile happened, they came back and, they had a good run for a couple of generations. But even in those generations, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't what God said. So either maybe God was wrong. Maybe God doesn't mean what he said. Maybe God was just hoping it would be the case and he wasn't able to accomplish it. Maybe we should just reinterpret this and say God meant something non-literal, right? Well, we shouldn't do any of those things. We should say, this is coming soon. God's going to establish eternal, forever salvation. And that's only through Jesus Christ himself as well. It says actually in verse 16, I put your words in my mouth and I've covered you in the shadow of my hand. I think that even that's talking something Christological there, looking forward to Christ. Is it? God says, I'm the Lord. I'm the only one who stirs up the sea and makes its waves roar. I am the Lord of hosts. That's my name. So then he talks about how those who go through the judgment of God, it's like they are drinking this cup of judgment and it's making them stumble and it's bad for them. And he says, look, you've had this judgment for a while, Israel. I'm going to pull you out of that. You've been judged. There's going to come a time where salvation is going to occur. And that's what we start to see in chapter 52. We see this time where there won't be this bad distinction between Jew and Gentile, that it's going to be united. How's that going to work? Well, it says there's going to be a time where someone's going to bring the good news, and he says, how beautiful on the mountains are the feet of those who preach good news, those who publish peace. Paul takes that language in the book of Romans and says that's what it's like for Christians. We have beautiful feet, so to speak, when we're the ones bringing people the gospel. It's a good thing. And he says, look, break forth into singing together. He says, you waste places of Jerusalem, the places that were destroyed. For the Lord has comforted his people. He's redeemed Jerusalem. The Lord has bared his holy arm before the eyes of all the nations, and all the ends of the earth shall see the salvation of our God. And when Jesus dies for sin, when he accomplishes what is necessary for people to be saved, and when he brings a people together and he establishes them in his city, guess what? All the ends of the earth are going to look to him and say, that's our God. That's our Lord, Jesus Christ. Then he says in verse 13, my servant shall act wisely. He shall be high and lifted up. He shall be exalted. And as many were astonished at you, servant of the Lord, his appearance was so marred beyond human semblance. He was beat up in such a way where people couldn't even recognize his humanity, it seems like. And his form beyond that of all the children of mankind. So he shall sprinkle all the nations. Kings shall shut their mouths because of him. For that which has not been told them, they see. And that which they have not heard, they understand. And then he goes on into Isaiah chapter 53, which we're going to talk about tomorrow, But interesting here, this servant of the Lord, in being beaten and destroyed physically, it says he will sprinkle many nations, which if you don't understand the ideas of Exodus and Leviticus of sprinkling blood on the altar and not making it clean and ready, you might not get this, but he's basically saying he's going to take care of people's sin. He's going to atone for people's sin. The righteous wrath of God for sin will be satisfied through this servant who's going to substitute and take his place. Who are we talking about? We're talking about Jesus Christ. And all the ends of the earth shall see the salvation. That's the time we're living in. People from all over the world are being saved right now. I mean, think about you. You are at the ends of the earth. You're on the other side of the world. This took place on the other side of the world 2,000 years ago. And we're like people at the ends of the earth getting saved, turning to Christ for salvation. It's good news. We're going to see more about how Jesus took our place tomorrow in Isaiah chapter 53. So today we're looking at this new book, 1 Thessalonians in the New Testament. This super short chapter, but this book itself, and really these two books, are good, encouraging books. Even this first book is more encouragement because there's no bad thing that he's addressing. There's no thing he's writing like to the Galatians saying, you left the gospel. It's not like that at all. The Thessalonians, in fact, were growing and they were doing good things. They were actually a church that was born into a lot of trouble and persecution. Acts chapter 17 says that when Paul and Silas came and preached the gospel, some people got saved, but the Jews in the town got so mad that they drove Paul and Silas out of town, and they even drove them out of the next town they were in. And so these Jews who were persecuting these Christians at the time were fierce. And Paul reminds these people, look, we are afflicted, right? Just like you guys are afflicted, but God is using your persecution to inspire other Christians to live for him. He says the good news about you, that you've turned from idols to serve the living God, that has been made known all throughout Macedonia and Achaia. People know about what your testimony is, which is super encouraging. If you have a testimony where God has turned you from serving idols, so to speak, to the living God, which any real Christian has that testimony, that can be used as an encouragement to help other Christians be more like Christ, to help other Christians serve Christ. And he says, not just your testimony of salvation, but also the fruit that you're bearing now. That's encouraging other people to bear more good fruit. Hopefully, as you read this, you can see that not every time Christians are addressed, it's always to correct a problem. Christians are often addressed in the New Testament to encourage them. Most of the time it is correction, but this time it's encouragement. And just be encouraged that if you have turned from idols and you've turned from living for self and your sin and turned to the living God, God can use that testimony to encourage other people to live righteously. So that's something you should pray for as well. So thanks for reading. See you back tomorrow from the Daily Bible Reading Snapshot.